would like to show you how you can design workflows with the SpikesTogether workflow tool. We're going to design a kind of approval workflow in SharePoint, and we're going to do that by means of Visio as a design tool. So to get started, you can simply navigate to Site Actions, and then there is an additional option over here to create a new workflow. So if we select this one, SpikesTogether Workflow will ask you for a new name for your workflow. So in this case, let's take Approval Workflow as the name. And you can also specify a description if you want to. So in this case, let's say you can use this workflow to approve any kinds of documents in SharePoint. Okay, so when we click OK, a document set is created where you can store all your configurations for this approval workflow. So let's start with our design. We do this by going to Documents, and then we're going to open our SpikesTogether Visual Workflow template. So we click OK here, and SharePoint will open Visio. What you see here on the left is the SpikesTogether Workflow Actions stencil. It contains all the workflow actions that you can use to compose your workflow. The actual workflow drawing consists of one or more swim lanes, one swim lane for each role in your workflow. So in the example of the approval workflow, we're going to use two different roles. One is a reviewer role, and the other one is an approver role. So let's add them to our diagram. So we call this the reviewer, and then we're going to add a second role, which is going to be the approver. Let's also change the title here of our workflow. Let's call it the approval main flow, like that. A workflow always starts with a start activity. This is the start point of your workflow. So we're going to use this one and drag it onto our drawing surface like this. After the workflow has started, we would like to assign a task to the reviewer to review that particular document. So let's add a user task activity, which is an activity that you can use to assign tasks to one or more users. And we give the name review. After the review is completed, we would like to assign a task to the approver to either approve or reject the review that the person has made in the previous step. So again, we're going to add a user task activity like this, and we're going to connect both activities. Let's give this a name, call it approve. So once the review activity is completed, the workflow will go to the next step, which is the approve activity. The approver has two options. So you can either approve it and then the workflow ends with the status approved, or he rejects it and then the workflow will go back to the reviewer where the reviewer can modify his review and so on. So if the reviewer approves, we're going to end the workflow. So we're going to use the end activity like this, and we're going this way if he chooses the approve option. If the approver rejects and review, we're going back to the previous step in our workflow. And we're going this way if the approver selects reject. So that's about it for this simple approval workflow. What remains to be done is we need to publish this configuration to SharePoint. So let's first save our visual file to SharePoint. So simply click Save over here. It will ask you for a file name. So let's call it approval workflow. And we're going to save it inside the document set that was created for us. So we click Save. It will ask us for confirmation if it is indeed a SpikesTogether visual workflow template. Yes, it is. So we click OK. So now it's saved to SharePoint. Okay, to publish the workflow, we go to the SpikesTogether workflow tab over here, where we click Publish workflow to SharePoint. It will open a dialog where we can enter some details. In this case, we're just going to fill in the name. We would like to have it in SharePoint, and then we just click Publish. Once the workflow has been published, you can use it in SharePoint on any library or any list that you would like to. So for example, we would like to use this workflow on the shared documents library. So we go to Library and we select Workflow Settings, Add a Workflow. As the template of the workflow, we're going to select the SpikesTogether workflow template. We're going to give our workflow a name, so let's call it Approve. We'll also specify which task lists will be used for our workflow and which workflow history lists will be used. We're also going to specify how the workflow will be started. In this case, we're just going to start it manually, so we leave it as it is. So we click Next. On this form, you can select one of the design configurations that you have been published to SharePoint. So in this case, we're going to select our approval workflow, and it will be version 1.0 that we're going to use. So we click Save, and we're going back. So now we're ready to go. So let's go to our shared documents library. I've added the documents in this library, so we can just start our workflow. So we simply go to workflow over here, and then we click the approve workflow that we've just created. So now the workflow is started, and as you can see, our approve workflow is in progress right now. If you go to the task list, this one, you also see that the workflow has created its first task, the review task, to a first user. To execute the task, we can simply click on the Add button over here. To complete our task, we can simply select one of the possible outcomes. For the review task, it's just one outcome completed. And when we click Save, we're going to execute our task. So that one is completed right now. So if we review our page, you see that the workflow has created the next step, the approved task, to a second user.